我就歡迎申訴專員黎連先生同埋助。
So may I welcome Mr. Lai Nin and Mr. Ma Kai Long. The Ombudsman will be giving members a briefing about his work, and this is also an opportunity for members and the Ombudsman to exchange views. May I remind members that during this meeting we will not be discussing individual cases, and also the meeting is not covered by the Electoral Powers and Privileges Ordinance Cap 382. Mr. Lai. Thank you. I am grateful to Electoral for giving me this opportunity to brief you on our work. I've already given members an information paper on our work in the first 8 months of the year, and we've also provided members with figures, including number of complaints received in the past few years, number of complaints dealt with, and so on and so forth. I want to say that in the past few years, the number of complaints remained rather stable. We receive about 1,000 inquiries every month. Members of the public make phone calls, and then every year we receive about 5,000 complaints on the average. In other words, about 400 odd on the average every month. And most of the complaints are dealt with and concluded within 3 months. And then the others are concluded within 6 months, and in fact there are very few cases which can't be concluded within 6 months. And members can see from para 3 the main modes of lodging complaints. So you can see the sources of complaints. For example, in person, by complaint form, by letter, through post, by fax, by online, complaint form, by email. And we can see that more and more complainants are complaining by email. So in the past year, or previously, when we received an email, we were worried that we might not be able to contact and trace the complainant, and that was why we tried to communicate with him by letter, through post. But then, if we receive an email and if we can ascertain the way to contact the complainant, then we'll communicate with the complainant by email. This is because more and more complainants are making use of the email channel. And we've carried out direct investigations as well as direct investigation assessments. Now, what is meant by direct investigation assessments? Now, before we carry out a direct investigation, we may need to carry out some studies as to whether the issue warrants a direct investigation. Now, in the assessment, we may discover that, in fact, we do not need a direct investigation for that issue or for that matter. So we've listed for members' reference the direct investigations we carried out in the past year, and also direct investigation assessments we carried out in the past year. So this is the work of the Ombudsman's office in the past year and in the first 8 months of this year. Thank you. Now, in fact, 2 members have raised questions. Ms. Cyd HO is not here, so Mr. CHAN Han-pan. Yes, thank you. Good morning, Ombudsman. I understand that you always the Ombudsman always acts impartially, and the Ombudsman has gained the trust of members of the public, and I understand that more often than not, the Ombudsman's recommendations are accepted by the departments concerned. In fact, I raised 2 questions, and the Ombudsman has provided replies. But then concerning the parking of bicycles, I want to follow up. In fact, in the Islands District, on Lama Island, on Cheung Chau, many people make use of bicycles for transport. But then you can see that at the piers, in the especially in the morning on Saturdays and Sundays, where there are a lot of visitors and tourists, we see lots of bicycles parked near the pier. Now, we understand that cycling is an environmentally friendly mode of transport, but then the departments concerned have not done enough to resolve the parking problem for bicycles. There may be areas which are more spacious and bicycles can be parked there, but then in the Islands District, especially near the pier, there isn't really enough space for the parking of bicycles. I think the departments concerned haven't really done enough to resolve this matter. And then, concerning illegal extension, I understand that in February, the Ombudsman met the FEHD Lands Department, Home Affairs Department, so you proactively carried out an investigation. Concerning the Summary Offences Ordinance 228, 4 and 4A, we understand that the police can make use of these powers to remove obstructions. But it seems that the Ombudsman hasn't contacted the police on this matter. So will you also consider asking the police to help deal with this problem? Chairman, thank you. On the parking of bicycles, of course, different districts deal with the issue differently. So it's really, to a very large extent, a matter of district management. If the district council and the district office can step up their action, then the situation will improve. It's rather difficult for the Ombudsman to recommend improvements or improvement measures for the departments to adopt, because we do not want to take over the work of the district management authorities. But of course, if people complain about the illegal parking of bicycles, and yet departments are concerned haven't taken any effective action, then we will look at the issue from the perspective of maladministration. But then concerning how to really resolve the problem, we hope that the district council and the district office can step up their work. For example, land should be, or sites should be set aside for the parking of bicycles. But of course, if for poor management, I think members of the public can make suggestions to departments concerned, and if such suggestions are not heeded, they can also complain to us. And then illegal extension of shops, in particular restaurants. Now, as the members are aware, we initiated a direct investigation in February this year. We understand that many shop operators put tables and stools on the pavement in the evening, and that of course amounts to an illegal extension of the shop. We understand that there have been a lot of complaints. Mr. Chen is right in pointing out that our direct investigation did not cover the police. This is because under the Ombudsman Ordinance, we do not have the power to investigate the work of the police. And that is why our direct investigation doesn't cover the police. Under the Ombudsman Ordinance, we can investigate the police only with regard to their compliance with the Code on Access to Information. So this is a restriction on our power under the ordinance. Thank you. Mr. Chan? Chairman, I think there is another department which is also relevant, and that is the EMSD. Very often, these shops which carry out illegal extensions are hot pot shops, and I understand that concerning the LPG stoves used, they are the responsibility of the EMSD. Yes, I'll take note of that. Thank you. 3 members have queued up to ask questions. Mr. Fernando Jam. Yes, thank you. I thank the Ombudsman for coming to this exchange session. I think this is a really a very good tradition, and the Ombudsman deals with maladministration on the part of government departments in implementing policies. I think very good checks and balances have been effected, and the Ombudsman has in the past years identified a lot of shortcomings on the part of government departments. In 2009, there was a direct investigation on the disability allowance mechanism, and the report points out a lot of defects in the system. The claim, one of the points made is that the claimant has to satisfy the 100% loss of earning capacity criterion, and you have proposed that such a reference should be deleted. So in fact, the report was published in 2009, and the SWD said that it accepted your recommendation. But I want to say that this policy still has not changed. In fact, the administration promised to carry out a review, but then the report of the review is still not available. So the Ombudsman carried out direct investigations. You made very clear recommendations to government departments, including the SWD in this case. And I understand that although the department has accepted your recommendation, it has the autonomy as to what action it wants to take. So will you follow up on the follow-up actions taken by the SWD? I understand that under the ordinance, if you are unhappy with the follow-up action taken by a particular department, you can submit a report to the CE, and the department concerned must, within 1 month or at a time considered suitable by the CE, give a progress report to the LegCo. So have you done this before? Have you made use of this mechanism before? In fact, I understand that the Ombudsman's office has given an award to the SWD. So you are praising them for their work. But I want to say that the SWD hasn't really implemented the Ombudsman's recommendation. Mr. Lai, I want to say that the Ombudsman acts in accordance with the powers laid down in the Ombudsman Ordinance. Now we can point out the inadequacies of government departments. We make recommendations or suggestions, but then we do not have the power to force government departments to take any action. Now, when we carry out our direct investigations, we are in close contact with the departments concerned. We ask them whether our suggestions are reasonable or not. We ask them whether our recommendations are feasible or not. And in over 90% of the cases, government departments accept our recommendations. But as to how they implement the improvements, and the timetable depends on the nature of the recommendation. Sometimes when policies are involved, there is a need for further coordination within the government.
For us, in the Ombudsman's office, after investigation, we of course take follow-up action. We always ask the departments concerned about their progress. And in our annual report to the CE, we set out our work in that particular year. And then in the LegCo, we also table a government minute to report on our work in that particular year. And the government departments always submit their responses in the government minute in relation to how government departments handled our cases and what responses they had offered. We also pursue the progress made by government departments. As regards the pace of their responses is beyond our control. As we submit the relevant cases to the LegCo will consider whether or not our recommendations are reasonable. The reasonable expectation is that for different policy areas, LegCo members can, of course, follow up on the issues in the relevant panels. That's a possible avenue. As Dr. Chong said, whether or not I invoke my power to do anything, I have to say that I can submit reports to the CE. If a department does not accept our recommendations or they consider our recommendations unreasonable and there's disagreement, then the normal procedure is to report to the CE. If a department accepts our recommendations, then sometimes it is very difficult for us to submit another report to the CE to say why the department had proceeded so slowly, because the department is not saying that it won't do it. It's just a matter of pace. And there may be various reasons. Maybe because of resource problems. Perhaps the department has to consult other departments on possible impacts. There may be various reasons. As for the Ombudsman is concerned, we do follow up with government departments on the progress on our report. For example, bicycle parking spaces, we have all along been following up on the issue and how many more spaces have been created, etc., etc. So we've been following up on issues. As for the illegal extension of trees, the departments concerned may seek legislative amendments. They may discuss with parties concerned about the penalty provisions. So changes may not be able to be effected immediately. Let me give you another concrete example. Just recently, the EMSD said something about lift regulation for legislative amendments which involve contractors, reporting, etc. In fact, in our report in 2009-2010, we say that the EMSD should do something to regulate the safety of lifts. We asked whether or not sufficient measures had been adopted, and it took 2 to 3 years to see the effect of the changes. So you see, overall speaking, changes made to the overall system had resulted in better results, and the level of governance, the standard of governance had improved. I understand the Ombudsman's situation. However, there is a difficulty in the present circumstance because departments may accept the Ombudsman's recommendations but continue with their old paths and practices. I think the Ombudsman should follow up on whether or not departments have followed up on the Ombudsman's recommendations, and on their websites there should be clear dissemination of information on whether or not the departments concerned have followed up on the Ombudsman's recommendations. For example, the monitoring of private residential care homes for the elderly. You proposed legislative amendments, but when will that come forth? We still don't have any information. So on the website, we should be able to trace the Ombudsman's work and government departments' responses. Thank you for the advice. Mr. Wong Kok Heng. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to thank Dr. Fernando Cheung for referring to the SWD case, which was followed up by myself. I'd like to thank the former Ombudsman, Ms. Tai, for carrying out investigation on the disability allowance and his inquiry. We got the direct investigation report in 2009. As for the direct investigation report of the Ombudsman, there were very clearly 8 recommendations. Mr. Lee Seng-leung sought judicial review from the court, so he was engaged in a litigation. At that time, the SWD said that because of that judicial review, it would not conduct a review. After the judicial review, a review was carried out by the SWD. But then the incident had been dragged on for many years. We can now see that the review conducted by the SWD was not based on the 8 recommendations of the Ombudsman back then. Now, my question now is, will the Ombudsman, on the basis of the SWD and the Labour and Welfare Bureau's non-compliance with the recommendations of the Ombudsman, take follow-up action? Well, I really appreciate your work, and openly at LegCo meetings, I recommended you, and when Ms. Tai came, I also praised her. If a government department, for example, the SWD, does not follow your advice openly, not secretly, Dr. Cheung mentioned the criteria, but they did not review the criteria. Now, I'd like to ask the administration or the Ombudsman this. Well, if the LegCo discovers that they've not followed your advice openly, if we followed up with you, would you pursue the case and carry out another investigation? The second question is, if it is proved that a government department openly refuses to follow your advice, will you write to the CE to ask that he handles the case? Well, if this is raised personally or by LegCo, will you follow up? Ombudsman, I think your answer just now was already very clear. Any supplement? Well, just now I explained the procedures. I have to reiterate one point. The Ombudsman's recommendations are recommendations. They are not instructions. Government departments do not necessarily have to accept our recommendations. If we point to omissions or errors in the administration, apart from following our recommendations, there are other methods to solve the problem. Well, they can follow the Ombudsman's advice, that's method A, but they may also have method B. That is, a department does not have to follow the advice of the Ombudsman. It really depends on the circumstances and the way of handling a case. I think we should keep an open mind to see whether or not our proposed methods are effective. And if overall changes are to be made, the relevant LegCos panel has a lot of opportunities to follow up on the cases. We're not on policy matters. We target administrative practice of government departments to see whether or not they have followed the policy set out. If that's not the case, we'll intervene and carry out an investigation. Our recommendations are recommendations, but our recommendations are not the sole solutions. Government departments can make changes to our recommendations. So that is the difference. Mr. Chairman, a follow-up question. Precisely, the Ombudsman has done his job. So for the departments, they don't have to follow completely your recommendations because you're not the court. Now, precisely, I want to follow up on this. If a government department is very obstinate and does not follow your recommendations, will you carry out follow-up investigation? Well, of course, if a department does not accept our recommendations and adopts other solutions leading to other problems, of course, I can follow up. For example, can I personally or can the LegCo further complain to you on the basis of the 2009 report? Will you accept our complaints? Well, I think these are hypothetical questions. As I said at the beginning of the meeting, we won't discuss individual cases here. Otherwise, we'll focus on a particular case endlessly. Well, today we're here to discuss the Ombudsman's report. You have a case. Well, I'm not talking about the case. Well, you can lodge a complaint with them yourself. Well, I am asking the Ombudsman, under such a circumstance, will the Ombudsman accept a further complaint from individual members of the public? So you're referring to a case, a specific case. Well, I'm asking whether the Ombudsman will accept further complaints. Will the Ombudsman will readily accept complaints at any time? Ms. Claudia Mo. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From the report, I can see that for certain cases, they're actually not accepted. That is in paragraph 4.19 of your report. 248 cases asked for reinvestigation. And eventually, 95 of those cases were investigated into again. Now, that's a rather high percentage. Will it be that at the beginning of the assessment exercise there were certain omissions? Because that amounted to about a third of the cases. And then about reviews. In this year, 39 cases had to be reviewed. Among the 39 cases, 35 cases were upheld. That is, you don't need to pursue any further. But then 4 cases were outstanding, and 3 were subject to a full investigation. And the decisions on 2 cases were changed. Well, I think you left out 1 case, right? Statistically, I'm a bit confused. It's paragraph 4.22. Well, never mind the figures before that, but in 4.22, 39 cases were reviewed, 35 cases were upheld. That is, the original decisions were upheld. That means 4 were outstanding. In table 4.2, and then also in 4.23, you also say, I think what you meant was that the remaining 3 cases were put under full investigation. So what about the remaining 1? Well, Mr. Chairman, a simple reply. For full investigation, we changed the mode of investigation after the review. That means the outstanding case might not be subject to a full investigation, so you did not record it here. For those 3 under full investigation, in accordance with our ordinance, we have statutory powers to carry out a full investigation. If we do so, we have to notify the department concerned according to the statutory procedures to inform them that a full investigation would be launched. So we have procedures to follow in follow-up actions.
What about my first question? 4.20. Why is there such a large figure? 4.20. That's chapter 4. 4.20. Concerning the complainants and objection raised by complainants and departments. Now, sometimes the information provided by a complainant is not enough, and as a result, we can't follow up. But then the complainant may subsequently provide supplementary information. I know in some cases, you ask the complainants, they do not know how to reply, and sometimes they just disappear, and then they may appear again after some time. Chairman, I want to say that the Ombudsman is extremely popular among members of the public. You know, you're like Judge Bao in ancient China. If people feel aggrieved, they will say, let's complain to the Ombudsman. So, of course, and the Ombudsman comes up with very impartial recommendations. But sometimes these recommendations are not implemented. You said that because of different factors, departments might not implement the recommendations very quickly. Now, you know, there are members of the public who do not use the internet. I'm in particular talking about elderly persons. So, can you consider making available the report not only to LegCo but to the media, so that the media can give coverage with regard to your work? Now, in fact, when there are cases of public interest, we will cover them in our press conferences. We do hold press conferences from time to time, and we, at a press conference, give an account of the direct investigations going on, and also cases of interest. But of course, in talking about cases of interest, we will not disclose the names of the complainants or the names of those concerned. We'll just give the facts. We'll just want to raise public concern about such incidents and how they should be dealt with. Yes, Chairman, I wish to follow up. I of course know that the Ombudsman meets the media from time to time and share with them cases of public concern or cases of interest. But then, will you at the press conferences criticize or reprimand departments for not having implemented your recommendations? Now, in fact, in over 90% of the cases, departments accept our recommendations. In fact, there are very few cases in which departments do not accept our recommendations. But you may ask, then why did you say over 90%? That is because sometimes when we conclude the cases, we give recommendations, and departments say they need some time to consider the recommendations. In fact, we keep in touch with departments when we carry out the investigations or when we deal with the complaints. we we also try to get their input. But then sometimes some of our recommendations may have resource implications, or some of them may have to be backed up by legislation. That's why these recommendations may not be able to be implemented very expeditiously. So you are telling us that in over 90% of the cases, departments accept your recommendations. So are there cases in which they do not accept your recommendations? And have you come across departments which claim that they accept your recommendations, but in fact they make no changes? Now, in fact, there are cases when we carry out an investigation afresh. So can you give us the nature of such cases? For example, concerning unauthorized building works on the small house or in small houses. That's not the first time we are publishing a report. Mr. Low Wei Kwok. Yes, Chairman. Concerning cases concluded after mediation in 09103 cases, then 10117 cases, 10112 22 cases, and then it is said in the annual report that you've updated your mediation procedures. You are trying to encourage complainants and departments to resolve their differences through mediation. I think this is a good policy. If there are cases which are minor in nature and which do not involve maladministration, then I think mediation is a good way to resolve the difference. And I think that the outcome would be fairer to the departments concerned too. But then as we've seen more cases resolved through mediation, and does that mean that in fact there is this trend, and that is in fact there are more and more complaints which have nothing to do with maladministration? In other words, is it that more and more members of the public are considering the Ombudsman as a shortcut to deal with problems other than maladministration? Now, because we understand that the Ombudsman is mainly responsible for investigating and dealing with maladministration cases. So I want to know the reaction of the Ombudsman in this regard. So do you agree that more and more people are using the Ombudsman as a shortcut to resolve their grievances or their problems? Now, Chairman, thank you. In fact, the Ombudsman ordinance empowers us to deal with cases by mediation. Previously, we didn't make too much use of this channel. But then when I assumed office, I realized that there were sometimes complaints of a very minor nature. And in such cases, the departments being complained against had not committed maladministration. In other words, there were problems, but the problems were not caused by maladministration. So, is it that I should tell the complainant, there is a problem, but that is not maladministration, so I will not deal with the complaint? But then this is because there is a problem. The problem still exists, but neither side is in the wrong, and so if both parties are agreeable, then we can bring the two parties together and help resolve the matter. And I think that's a good thing. Now, I can give members one example. In fact, dealing with the case by mediation is better than saying that one department is guilty of maladministration. Now, there was a public housing tenant, and the estate management office had to do something about the electricity cables, and the contractor had to gain access to the public housing units to lay the cables. But then a public housing tenant didn't want to admit staff from the housing authority or the housing society. I don't know which body it was, and so the tenant complained to us about the nuisance. But then we understood that cables could be laid only if the contractor could gain access to the public housing units. So the housing authority or the housing society was just trying to seek the tenant's assistance. That was not maladministration. But then the tenant felt that there was a nuisance and he felt aggrieved. Now, on that occasion, I felt that the complaint was not substantiated. But then we talked to the public housing tenant. He said that he had his own difficulties. He didn't want to cause any nuisance to his family members. And then we talked to the that housing authority and asked whether there could be other solutions. And it was agreed that in 1 hour on a certain day, say from 12 to 1 o'clock, the main switch would be turned off, and then cables would be very quickly laid. So I think mediation would be better than telling the tenant that your complaint was not substantiated. There was no administration. So the case was resolved. So we did help the public housing tenant resolve his problem, and we also help the HA or the HS resolve his difficulty. So it was better than say acting in a very bureaucratic manner, saying that there was no maladministration, so the case would not be handled. So we think it's really good to have complaints and differences dealt with by mediation. In fact, we've heard of difficulties that you can't really imagine, and mediation is a very good way to resolve these problems. In fact, I am encouraging my colleagues to attend mediation courses to help resolve such cases. Mr. Low, yes, of course, I agree that if cases can be dealt with by mediation, it would be very good. But because of this approach adopted by you, many members of the public may feel that complaining to the Ombudsman is a shortcut to having their problems resolved. Do you think there is this trend? It's true that many cases can be dealt with by mediation, but I'm worried that people may regard complaining to the Ombudsman as a shortcut to resolving their personal problems, and as a result, government departments will find it very difficult to cope. We don't really find the figures or the trend worrying at this stage, at least. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Now, in the annual report, it is pointed out by the Ombudsman that very often people complain because they are only concerned about their own interests or their own situations. Now, very often the complaints are directed against one department, but then, as the Ombudsman has pointed out, in fact, many problems or cases can only be dealt with by interdepartmental coordination and cooperation. Mr. Lai. In fact, there are complaints which involve more than one department. Now, sometimes now different departments have their respective statutory powers, but they really want the other departments to take action, and as a result, they may tend to pass the buck. They want the other departments to do the work.
Therefore, in our opinion, internally within the administration, we need some coordination. If a complaint involves more than one department, if it involves a number of departments, then we should ask the departments to sit down together to work out who is going to do what. And this involves mostly district management issues. Is it a cleansing issue or a UBW issue, a land issue, a building safety issue, a land matter, or what? Now this will involve more than one department, and a department may think that it should be some other departments do the job. So for interdepartmental complaints which lead to problems, I have to point out that this is not unique to Hong Kong. When I attended international conferences and seminars, I also heard that they also encountered such problems which were very common. A department will often ask, why me, not others? That's why I point this out in my report, to see whether or not more coordination can be done within the administration. If more than a department is involved, then the department should sit together and work out joint operations, for example. They should not pass the buck amongst themselves. There must be somebody to do the work. Well, there's only one government in my eye. In the eyes of the public, there may be different departments, so the buck should not be passed among departments, thus leading to delay. Well, I agree with the Ombudsman, but apparently the problem has always been with us. When we do district work, we often encounter this problem. And even today, the administration has not made any changes in this regard in relation to government structure. So, number one, perhaps we need to lodge a complaint with the CE. Secondly, I'd like to ask about maladministration issues. For example, you carried out investigation into Columbaria. For us, for district councillors of the district, we're very clear that the management responsibility is on the FEHD. Due to their omissions or maladministration, the incident deteriorated. When it came to solutions, they had this problem of niches of 40 to 50 years old. And very often they had to take care of laws, reasons, and compassionate grounds. So maybe it's not maladministration on the part of a government department, but when a department has to take care of both law, reasons, and passion, then they have to strike a balance. The department cannot be too lenient or too harsh. So it may be quite a miserable process. Illegal grapes did pose a problem. Well, for guidelines or advice issued by you, the Ombudsman, to government departments, for example, in the case of Columbaria, were you able to do something? Well, I won't dwell on individual cases. When it comes to district work, the district office and the district council should play a major role. Very often I feel that something may be a problem in a particular district, but not in another. So when we consider a particular case, Mr. Wu was correct. We have to take care of law, reason, and compassionate grounds. We have to strike a balance. When it comes to district management, we have to examine how departments at the district level and representatives of the district see the issue. For example, street obstruction. Some local communities may think that a minor extension of shops is not really too serious. In this street, the degree of tolerance may be higher. In another street, there may be a heavy pedestrian flow, so even a slight extension is not acceptable. Therefore, district councillors and organizations should reflect public opinion in that particular district. That's at the district level. So, district management involves a wide variety of considerations. In a district, not even a slight extension of a shop can be acceptable. And another, to have tables for al fresco dining may be conducive to tourism development and may be acceptable to members of the public and departments concerned. So, district councillors can offer a lot of recommendations to government departments for consideration. Ms. Ito, you can ask your question. Well, sorry, Mr. Chairman. Just now I was in the other room at another meeting. That is the Electoral Commission meeting. I'd like to thank the Ombudsman for coming to have a discussion with us. I actually submit a written question. Earlier, the CS for Administration used an English word to describe the Ombudsman's office. That is, the word hurdle. Well, that's rather negative. Maybe the CS used a wrong word at that particular moment. Anyway, that's a negative comment. Well, when the Ombudsman's office is inquired about the terms of reference of his office, will some government departments treat him as a hurdle? Mr. Justice Wu wrote his report in which he said that he asked departments for information which did not come forth very quickly, and very quickly the information was destroyed. Well, Mr. Justice Wu may be pointing to those government departments with a very strong central management. Well, the Ombudsman may not be inquiring into those government departments with a very strong central management. Maybe it has something to do with the monitoring of frontliners only. When an inquiry is related to a head of department, what will be the attitude of the department concerned? I'd like the Ombudsman to share with us his actual experience. And in paragraph 5 of his reply to my question, he said that we should promote positive culture about complaints. So you should take this opportunity to tell us what's positive culture in your mind. Will there be any discrepancy between that culture and the actual complaints? Otherwise, members of the public may consider the Ombudsman's approach negative. Then members of the public dare not say anything. Ombudsman, Mr. Chairman, when we discharge our duties, we base our job on a statutory foundation, that is the Ombudsman Ordinance. What I can do and what I cannot do are restricted by the Ombudsman Ordinance. It's not the public, but the law confers the power to me. So I start from the ordinance. And when I communicate with the department, I will inform the department which ordinance is my basis and which are the provisions in that ordinance that I'm basing on. I will disregard the views of the department because my power originates from the ordinance, not from any verbal or written undertaking from an individual. So my powers are statutory powers, so councillors need not worry. Well, yes, there are departments with a strong central management, but our office is also a very determined office. We're totally independent of the government. We're not civil servants with no worries, and nobody exerts pressure on me. As a public officer for so many years, I understand my rights and powers, even for a department with a strong central management. Well, we previously did something about the ICAC, which was also a strong department. So we know very well what we can do and what we cannot. For this expression of positive complaint culture, sometimes we receive from the complainants very insistent views. That is, only his complaint is correct. A complainant may not accept opinion from anybody else. And so in our office, there is a degree of difficulty in handling such a case. We hope that a complainant can keep an open mind in treating his complaint. He should not be so lopsided as to think that only his complaint is correct. And sometimes a complainant can be very insistent. If our investigation report slightly deviates from his opinion, he'll continuously complain about us. He may even come to our office and cause disturbances. So by that expression, we're targeting such behavior. I understand that not only our office faces such a problem. District councillors and ombudsmen elsewhere in the world also told me when I had exchanges with them that this was also the problem facing them. So we hope that complainants will be reasonable and open in their attitude and can accept investigation reports. We're not partial. We don't favor any particular party. We know that in a complaint, the complainant may not necessarily be entirely correct. We accept the complaint and investigate into it. We understand that the Ombudsman fully observes the ordinance in discharging their duties. For the statutory powers of the Ombudsman's office, they were actually prepared by the executive and enacted by the legislature. That's actually an internal check and balance mechanism. Secondly, the LegCo is also experienced in receiving complaints. We continuously receive complaints. Our complaints division also observed that a minority of the public, when receiving our responses, would feel that we failed to meet their demands. So for the Ombudsman, I'd like him to tell us their experience in this regard. Well, there may be members of the public who even complained against the Ombudsman himself. I understand that you received such complaints as well. Ombudsman, in actual fact, I'm very concerned about how my colleagues handle such complainants who insist on their own views. And sometimes we can even use the word barbarous to describe such complainants. You see, when handling a complaint, our frontliners involved may not be experienced enough to handle such complainants. And on many occasions, we invited outsiders to offer training to our staff to teach them how to face such complainants, how to handle complainants that are very insistent. And we organized training camps with local and overseas experts to offer us their advice. And overseas experts told us their overseas experience. Now, these have helped boost the ability of our staff to handle such complaints. And we have to have a positive attitude as well. If a complainant asks that we review and follow up on his complaint, we'll do so. And sometimes, in such cases, we'll ask another colleague to handle the complaint concerned. We'll try as far as possible to be objective and fair. We won't put on a pair of tinted glass in looking at such complaints. So this social phenomenon is not unique to Hong Kong. It happens very often, and you can find such cases throughout the whole world. People complain to our office, they complain about me, they also come to the electrical to complain. And sometimes they come to our office to complain about the electrical and complain to the electrical about us. And what we'll do is to see whether or not we can follow up on a particular case.
So we want our colleagues to be psychologically prepared to deal with such cases. And we do tell the complainants that we may impose certain requirements. For example, we may videotape the interview. We may, when the need arises, seek the assistance of the police. Such cases can be very time-consuming. Now, some of the complainants refuse to leave, and sometimes we have to call the police for assistance. All right, do members have any further questions? No? Then I thank the Ombudsman for coming, and the next meeting will be held in December 2013.